know what it means to be stripped of the outer things and have to find an inner source within that is the truth of who you are, no matter what changes outside of you. So when you're in your wholeness, it doesn't matter when the tides shift and change, as they will in everybody's life. You are so in tune and aligned with who you are as a woman because you have been rocked. And me and one of my really dear friends always say there's a difference between a pretty woman and a beautiful woman. I live in California. There's pretty women everywhere. But a beautiful woman has gone through some things. She's been tested. Her tears, have covered her. She has been in a place of true death where she's had to die to the things that no longer served her, that robbed her of her sense of peace in order to be reborn in who she is. So she's walking in that beauty for ashes, which is this internal, amazing, supernatural beauty. And that's the place that we want to get you to where when you walk in a room, and many of you are already in that place, when you walk in your room, your essence is not defined by what you have on, red bottom shoes, or whose label is on your back. It's really defined by who you are on the inside, being at peace with yourself. The most powerful woman in the room is the woman who's at peace with God, but the most beautiful woman in the room is the woman who's at peace with herself, because there's a rest in her heart. But there can be no rest in our hearts when our wombs are in trauma. I want to read to you guys, I don't know if anybody follows the work of Queen Afua, but she is really one of the, I would say one of the most groundbreaking leaders in the area of womb health as it relates to African American women. She's been working as a womb healer for over a decade and a midwife. And one of the things that she says is that the state of your womb reflects the state of your life. The womb is the gateway of all human life. When the womb is honored and respected, a woman becomes a channel of power, creativity, and beauty, and joy reigns on earth. But when her voice goes unheard, unanswered, and denied, the womb becomes a vessel of disease. And when you look around right now at the collective assault that is happening on women, from tumors to cysts, I had a friend who bled for 12 weeks, Kim. 12 weeks, was going through 4 pads a day, 4 sanitary napkins a day. And she kept going to doctors to say, what is wrong with me? And we had a conversation about her heart being broken, unrequited love, overgiving to men, being in this place where she didn't see her worthiness and value, and so she was pouring out and she wasn't receiving back. So the bleeding was really a symbolism of what you speak of, the inability to express the brokenness of her heart. And so she bled all those weeks, and just like the woman with the issue of blood who bled for 12 years, and no doctor could heal her, no doctor could save her, and she just touched the hem of the garment of Jesus. And that faith connection to source healed her. Instantly that blood dried up. And so many women are bleeding. They are victims of sexually aggressive acts. I speak to women sometimes who, as little girls, had a man look at them a certain way. Think about a little 5-year-old innocent girl who has somebody, an older man, look at her. We can tell as women when eyes are lusting after us. We know when something feels uncomfortable, and what does it do for us as little girls? We feel shamed. We feel the need to hide. We feel the need to compromise our beauty because the world has taught us that it's not safe to be beautiful. It's not safe to be free. It's not safe to be a woman. So we live with this disharmony with ourselves, and the earth is breaking because of it. The earth is breaking because woman is earth, Mother Earth. Yes. And so unnecessary hysterectomies are on the rise. Unnecessary hysterectomies are on the rise. C-sections are on the rise. Hormonal drugs are on the rise. Fibroid tumors, especially with African-American women. Listen, my mother used to always say, if white people get a cold, we get pneumonia. So this is not... I love everybody, and I'm called to serve everybody, and yet I have a special heart for my African-American sisters because we truly have forgotten our ancestral roots that, Kim, we used to be the women who could go out into our garden and we could heal our family with the herbs from our garden. We knew intuitively how to connect with nature. We knew intuitively to go sit out in the moon when our cycle was coming. You know, my grandmother lived to be almost 100, and this woman reverenced her cycle. She honored her cycle. She didn't treat it like a curse. She didn't let PMS ravage her. She understood that PMS, what doctors have labeled us as being crazy, because we're dealing with a masculine white male system. So we're labeled crazy as women, but actually what happens during PMS is that we become so incredibly intuitive and sensitive to truth in our life that anything that's not truth has to go, and it irritates us. That's the time that you're most sensitive. So the old school women used to go out in their moon lodges, and they would get their journals, and they would let God download to them divine wisdom. The husbands would watch the babies, and the grandmas and the elders would watch the children, and the women would commune together in moon lodges because all of their periods were set to the moon. Most of the women in our community, their periods are set to the moon. I've taught them how to do that. Like you said, the moon cycle is the woman's body. But we're
I started mine.
disconnected.
The new moon,
Right. So the new moon, the full moon, our cycles are connected and they mirror the moon. But we're in this time of negative womb power. The condition of a woman's womb, Kim, reflects the condition of her mind, her spirit, and her actions. Speak on that.
Ooh. Shannon, that was so heavy.
Right? I mean, and we're not even started yet.
Oh, my goodness. Wow, I don't even know where to start with that. That was just so heavy. But you're absolutely right, Shannon. I have, as I was saying just a moment ago, I started my cycle a couple of days ago. It was on the same day of the new moon. And we have gotten so disconnected from our power and from who we are. Even with our children and the way we're raising our children, I don't have girls, but if I did, I would celebrate them on the day, when they first have their period. I remember when I first had mine and how much shame was associated with that, and how I wished that, that I know now, that I knew then what I know right now, and that is that I am to be celebrated and not hate this, and because of it, deal with all of the PMS that comes with it, and not know how to take care of myself, and not know how to nurture and nourish myself, and to really cherish myself and who I am. I remember hiding my underwear because I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't even want my mother to know that I had started my cycle. I remember going to school and bleeding through my clothes and telling somebody, I just said in something that was red. I was so ashamed. I remember hating that time of the month, and for so many years, probably up until I was, in my 30s, probably about a good 10 years ago, still hating my cycle. And how often do we do that, and how often do we disconnect from who we are and all of the repercussions of that with our health, and you just being constricted women. And you're absolutely right on how we express through our bodies. I remember working out a while back, and I was working out with a trainer, and one day I just wept and I wept and I wept during the training session, and she stopped for a moment, and she let me get it out, and then I continued on, and she said that she had clients every now and then who would do that, and so I started researching, like, what is that all about? And I was learning, just asking people and researching and asking people in the psychology field, what is that all about? And I was learning that there are times that we hold emotions in our body, that we don't process that stuff. So we hold it in our bodies, and different activities, different triggers will allow us to, be able to move that energy out of our bodies. And all emotions is energy in motion. And when we're not able to process that and move that through, we have that anger and we just hold on to that. It's sitting in our wombs, and it's just, just collecting, just sitting there collecting, and it's not moving through. And then we wonder why we have some of the issues that we have in our bodies, and a lot of it's because we are constricted and we're not releasing and we're not moving those emotions through our body and dealing with the emotions and dealing with the anger and dealing with the density that's there. But so it's thick and it's murky and it's heavy, and we're not dealing with it, and then it shows up as disease and it's killing us.
Because the other thing about it is that, our womb reflects the condition of our relationships, too. I work with so many women. Even as I went through the completion of my marriage, I still studied men for so many years, and intuitively, I know how to engage a man, to speak to a man. So I've helped so many women get married. So I have a lot of marriages that come out of my coaching practice and out of my classes and workshops. But one of the other things that I have is I have a lot of women who believe that marriage is a magic wand to all the woes. And so they would come to me and they would say, well, Shannon, I just, the biggest point of pain in their life was that they didn't have a relationship. And then when we would start to dig deeper, I would find out they had fibroid tumors and they had extra weight on them and they had broken finances and they had unhealed memories in their womb. Now, listen, the womb is absorbent. Kim, you're the one who taught me about vaginal steaming, yoni steaming. So I started doing it. Right after you taught me that practice, that's my thing now. And when I go to the Asian, community and I get these steams done, I literally leave my steaming session and my brain, my soul, my body feels lighter. This is from a process of herbs coming up through the vaginal walls, absorbing. And one of the Asian doctors told me, yes, the lining of your uterus, that wall is the most absorbent place in the world. That's how some of these skinny girls who don't want to drink, they'll soak a tampon in vodka. And that sounds gross, but they get drunk because there's nothing more absorbent. There's nothing more absorbent than that tissue. And so if we don't understand the mind-body-soul connection, it's amazing to me that a woman can walk in a room and feel negative energy that'll tighten her stomach up in knots, that will make her think, ooh, what's the vibe in here? It feels weird. We're so much more empathic. We're so much more connected to energy now as we evolve. A woman can sit in somebody's presence and get a bad feeling, a bad vibe, and yet we will let men enter our body as absorbent as we are and as much memory as our wombs hold and think that won't affect us. And so we're running off to the next man and we're running off to the next fix. And I love this quote that says, order is heaven's first law. And so the reason that we are talking about the womb is because this is the order. The order is that if we're going to be a whole woman, and that's my work, is wholeness and purpose and calling and worthiness, then we want to be in a place where we've made peace with every single aspect of our womanhood. So, the physical womb crisis is over 500,000 hysterectomies are performed every year. There's a doctor, Dr. Michael Toop, and he works with women. He's an OBGYN. He's dedicated his life to helping women find alternatives to hysterectomies. I have clients who had hysterectomies at 19. I have clients who had hysterectomies before they even got to have a child. And so over 550,000 hysterectomies are performed every year. And what Dr. Michael Toop says is that in the vast majority of these cases, everything's benign. It's non-threatening. Only 10% of hysterectomies are performed for cancer. 10%. So, and then again, like my mother said, if white America, gets a cold, black America gets pneumonia, what ends up happening, because as an African-American woman, we're going so against our DNA, our divine DNA that's connected to the roots and the natural path that we used to live before we were brought here. You know what I mean? So we suffer even more. 25% of us, we're 25% more likely to have a hysterectomy than a white woman with our same age and our same issue. So if a white woman goes into the hospital and she says, I'm bleeding, I have and they don't have fibroids like we do. They don't have cysts like we do. We're the ones suffering with this unexpressed pain more than any other cultural group. Because I believe that the healing that God wants to perform, the first will be last and the last will be first, is really about the awakening and the positioning and the power that's been forfeited by us as women. You know, we have really forgotten who we are in this culture. We've forgotten. And I'm surrounded, Kim, every day in my workshops and groups by women who are waking up and they're remembering. It is the most beautiful thing to see. Do you know we flow in magic? We flow in alchemy daily. Like, we manifest like this simply because we are doing the work to remember, and the work is diligent. It's not, oh, I remember and I'm good. No, you stay in. This is a lifestyle.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
so many of us are suffering physically because we're not supposed to eat this kind of food. You know, we're not wired to drink cow milk and eat, all of these products that are killing us. And so one of the greatest enemies to our health, you mentioned this, Kim, is stress.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about the stress that we're under as women, and I'm mindful of every culture of woman who's on this call, so please, know that this is for you. However, I speak directly to where, there's more of a need, and for so many of us, there's more of a need because we have much more to recover from. So speak to the stress in a woman's life and how that creates a crisis as well in the womb.
Absolutely. And that's why I started off with talking about softening, because as women, we have certainly gotten away from that because we feel that we're more powerful if we are hard, if we, you have that kind of mentality. Well, you can't let them see you sweat, and don't let anybody see you cry, and you always got to have this hard exterior. And I know women like that, and I used to be that way. I was that way for a great while, especially after just getting over divorce. You feel like, well, I have to hurry up and heal, and I have to look cute, and I have to take these pictures, and I have to show the world that I'm doing good, and I'm doing well, and I'm fine, and I've got it going on. And on the inside, all along in relationships that I had gotten in after being divorced had shown me that there were still wounds there, and those people, those men were there as a mirror for me to see myself in the wounded person that I was, and all of the hurts that were still there. And so we have all of this hardening because we feel as though we have to be something that we're not and show the world that, I can make it, and, I can do anything that he can do. And the truth of the matter is that we are not equal. We are not equal to men. Now, we shouldn't be subservient to them, and we shouldn't take less pay than they take, but we are not the same as a man, and we are very different. In fact, I believe there are many ways that we are superior beings. And so the stress of that, the stress of trying to keep it all together, the stress of trying to do it all, it's really affecting us in many ways. And one of the ways that it affected me was just holding all of this emotional pain and hurt in me and not really getting the healing and the help that I wanted or that I needed, is because I wanted people to see that I was okay or to think that I was okay when I was not. And here I am traveling and I'm writing books, but I'm still not okay and still not dealing with the issues that I need to deal with, and still pretending and get halfway healed and whole and just, start running down the street, but not being diligent about our healing. And it is a process. It's not like, I'm healed today and I'm done. No, there's so
many layers.
Things. Yes, so many layers in the subconscious level that we don't even realize is there until it's triggered for whatever reason. Just like when I was doing that workout, and I was finding, oh my God, there are so many areas in me that's hurting, and they're being triggered now, even in this physical activity. But stress is killing us, and so one of the ways to combat that is through softening. And that's
soft
funny
is
that
the new strong, Kim. Soft
yes.
is the new strong. That's what I think.
Absolutely, because what softening does, it helps you to be in your natural order, as you just said, that natural order of being receptive and allowing God, allowing the Holy Spirit, allowing the universe, allowing the Lord just to come in and to speak to you, to touch you, to heal you, to impress upon you, to show you what to do. We are so intuitive, and we're so disconnected from that, and we are afraid of it because men were afraid of it, so we're even afraid of our own intuition, and we're not sure, and we think, oh, because I got into this relationship, or I can't listen to my intuition anymore because I was hurt listening to my intuition. And there is a difference, between there is a difference of your wisdom, being wise, and being connected to your intuition, and I'm just going to do something just for the sake of doing it. But when you are so in tune with who you are, you will still make mistakes. But you will learn from them. You will connect on a deeper level, and even if you are with someone who may not have been, in your eyes, as the ultimate person, or the person that you're supposed to be with the rest of your life. Did that person teach you anything? Did you learn anything from that experience? And we can still look at it as divine, and we can alchemize that, and we can give that back and use it as compost for our growth, for our spiritual growth, for our emotional well-being. And so all of it is necessary. Everything that we're going through, it is necessary for our evolution, for our growth, and we can use it, and we can alchemize that, and we can transmute that and use that for our growth. But it starts with softening. It truly starts with softening, and I believe when we just get to the place where we could just breathe. And yes, there are times when we do have to get out there and work. Of course, we have to make it happen. We have to get up in the morning. Some of us are probably at work right now. Some of us have to work tonight. Some of us may have to get up and go to work in the morning. But before we go to work, what are we putting on? What type of armor are we putting on? Are we putting on, strapping up so we can, I got to get out there and be hard? Or are we softening in the morning so we can allow our intuition to speak to us and to speak through us? And so softening is a great way, and it may sound kind of contradictory that you soften to use that to combat your stress, but you do.
Yeah. You know what, Kim, you speak to something that is so profound as it relates to the inability to differentiate good vulnerability from harmful vulnerability. Because one of the things that I think we do, and I did this when I was very active in ministry, and I was, the main breadwinner, and I was doing my thing, and I literally used to joke and say that I was going to write a book called I Got This Baby, Just Hold My Purse. Woo! I got this baby, just hold my purse. And so women, if you look at the mythical story of Eve and Adam, you look at the fact that Eve was like, God's keeping something from me, I'm going to go get mine, and Adam was in the bushes holding her purse talking about, it wasn't me, it was her. So this passivity that we see in our men, this power that we see in our women, this lack of balance and flow. I've been married and I've been single. To me, marriage is better. I've been thin and I've been, overweight. To me, being lean is better. I've been rich and I've been poor. To me, being rich is better. So I will never be a woman who is, even coming out of a marriage that had to complete itself. I have never been a woman who's like, I don't need a man. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. We had an event here yesterday where we had a film crew come in to film a bunch of videos for us for all of our online courses coming up this year, because this is the year of completion. 2016 is the year of completion, so we're getting our work done because 2017 is the year of birthing vision, and so new vision. And so last night, these men came in, they started fixing stuff in my backyard. Just because they had downtime in between the shoots. Let me tell you something. They fixed all the bricks that were going around my fire pit. One of them went and lined up all the lights in the backyard and spaced them right. They just started fixing stuff. And so I said, I so value the presence of a man, and I so value the participation of a man. I so value the energy, the spiritual covering, the beauty of a good man. There is nothing on this earth like the healing that comes through our opposite sex partner. And so there is never a time that you will catch me saying that part of my heart is just okay. As long as I got King Jesus, I don't need nobody else. Yes, I do. I've heard it all. I've heard women say it. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So, but what it is, we don't want to be vulnerable. You know, I remember years ago, my old hairstylist saying to me when I was super saved, and I was like, I don't want a man. It's just me and Jesus, and we're going to conquer these mountains together. And she was like, Shannon, let me stop you right there. She said, you're lying. She just told me, she said, you're lying. You know those kind of hairdressers who prophesy?
Yes.
She's like, you're lying. You do want a man. You're just afraid that one isn't coming or that you won't get one. Yes. And so in order to avoid disappointment, it's just easier to say that you don't want one, because when you think you're in control, you think you can minimize future pain. And I fell out of her salon chair in that salon in Beverly Hills, got into the fetal position, started crying. I don't know, all my years of like saying I didn't want anybody when I was young in my faith, it just kind of hit me. And it was like, oh my God, I do want my soulmate. And I feel like I manifested that for the first part of my journey, and now will manifest my spiritual life partner for the rest of my journey. But we think that if we're not vulnerable, that we can grit our teeth and survive the world. But what we don't realize is that when we harden ourselves against the world, that same hardness, it doesn't open us up. It prevents us from being opened up and transformed. Look, I've had my heart broken. But the beautiful thing about a broken heart is that it's an open heart. Sometimes the most broken heart is the most open heart. So when I see a strong, tough woman, I don't pay attention to bravado. I look at a woman who's had to be strong. She's had to be tough because she hasn't been able to let down her guard, because it's like, who's going to come for me? Who's going to protect me? And so God is very clear that, he will allow us to stay in our thing. My job is my security. My man is my security. My numbers behind my name, not numbers, but my letters behind my name is my security. This is my identity. And then we reach a place to where those things get stripped away.
Yep.
And then our life, we have to look at a place and say, this isn't working. And God says, this is where I've invited you, to these places that have been shattered, to these places that have been broken, because I want to show you that at the end of the day, no matter how hard you try to protect yourself against being vulnerable, it's the beautiful place of vulnerability that allows us to be opened up and transformed. So to me, it takes more strength to let go, to be soft. I remember when I went through my divorce, I had to actually reach out to my community and ask for help. I had to ask for help with basic things like, how am I going to feed my children? Like, we live in a very affluent neighborhood. How am I going to pay my bills? Like, I shut down. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I remember the phone calls I had to make. I made those phone calls in tears. Are you kidding me? I'm a grown woman asking people to put groceries in my refrigerator. And I'm coming from a place where, I had money coming in, but now it's not coming in. And so when God drives you down to your knees in a place of humility, when you go low like that, you go very high after that. Because now it's a different scenario. Now I'm helping out the people that I had to borrow from. You see what I'm saying? So, but it was first that coming to the end of my need to be so strong and be so tough and not need anything. And it was the beauty of then seeing all the people in the community who wanted to help. And so I think when we make peace with our bodies, when we make peace with ourselves, we actually see that there's so many people who want to be in participation of the rebirthing of our dreams. And that's where we get into the emotional womb crisis. There are unhealed cries of the womb. There are broken hearts. There are women who have not been touched by a man in 10 years. There are women who haven't been. I told a story to my ladies not too long ago. I had gone and got my hair cut. I got all my hair cut off because it was like the last layer of deadness to me, the last layer of that former life. So it was very symbolic. And when I got my hair cut, I got on the freeway and I'm heading home. And I was getting on the freeway, and there was this massive, really attractive homeless man who was on the freeway, and he was holding a sign. And so something said, stop, and give him some money. And so I rolled down my windows, and I'm looking for money, and I don't have any money. And I said to him, I'm so sorry, sir. All I have is, granola bars, and I had some snacks for him. And so I remember when I went to give him the food that I had, our hands touched. And when he touched my hand, I looked in his eyes, Kim, and this beautiful feeling overwhelmed me because I felt like I was looking at an angel. Wow. And I smiled when I touched him, but I also cried when I touched him because I was like, God, it's been a long time since a man has touched me. You know what I mean? I'm used to being married, like being touched by a man every day. And I was like, oh, my God, this man touching me is moving me. And he looked at me, and I smiled, and he said, you are beautiful, and you have the most beautiful smile. And you know, I got on that freeway, and I wept all the way home. I wept all the way home because I felt like God used him as a conduit to say to me, I still see you. I see you, and you are beautiful, and you are worthy, and your gift, my best man is on the way, but in the meantime, let me remind you of who you are. And I got into bed that night, and I just said, God, I am lonely. I've never wanted to say that I was lonely, but in that moment, that transformational, just being touched. So sometimes there's unexpressed love, there's unexpressed connection because the very thing we were wired for, which is to see and be seen and to love and be loved, we're taught not even to say that. I don't want to look needy. You know, I don't want to say I need a man. There's a difference between a needy woman and a woman who has wisdom and clarity enough to know that two is better than one and that the journey is beautiful when it's shared. But again, that womb healing needs to happen. And you talk about being a fully embodied woman, and what does that mean?
So to be a fully embodied woman is basically another word for wholeness, to be whole. And I just love that you're so honest, Shannon. It really frees us up. It frees us up as women when we can be authentic and when we can be vulnerable and honest and say those things like I need something, I need some help, or to say those, oh, I'm lonely. And to not front. I kid with my friends a lot, and I call Facebook fake book because so often, you know, we live on Front Street. We live on Front Street, and we are always, you know, putting something out there so that people can perceive us a certain way. And so to be a fully embodied woman or to be a whole womb man, we've got to learn how to be present within our womb space, within our sacred seat, and be honest with ourselves and to say, hey, you know what, I am lonely. And it's not a bad thing to say that I'm lonely because what? Lonely is an emotion. And how many of us can admit on this call that we have times of loneliness?
And it passes. It passed through me once I acknowledged it. Once I acknowledged it, it passed through me as long as I was running from it and repressing it. And like you say, not giving it a voice of expression, it was causing something to die inside of me rather than live, right?
Yes. And so when we process that emotion, when we give it voice, when we pay attention to it, when we are honest about it, it's amazing how we can move that out of us. And so being fully embodied is just learning how to be 100% present in your womb. And it's almost like that game, you know, the game we used to play musical chairs. Everybody has a seat, and if the music stops and you don't have a seat, you're out of the game. So it's like taking a seat in your sacred seat, taking a seat within yourself. It's visualizing a seat being in your womb space, and you take a seat there, and when you sit there and when you're 100% there, a lot of this other stuff cannot reside where you are. A lot of unwanted energy and a lot of unwanted mess and gut can't stay there because you are 100% there and you're tending to your womb daily. So we've got to learn to tend to our womb and to be 100% there. And an easy way to do that is to be present there, is to drop down from the head, that head space, that hustle space, that let me think and conjure up ideas, that let me throw a whole bunch of ideas out there and see what sticks. But just softening and dropping down to the womb space and even visualizing that and paying attention even to that space that's right under your navel, right just a couple of inches right down there in that sacred seat area in your womb space. And even if you don't have a womb, Shannon and I were talking about this the other day, even for women who've had to have it removed, who don't have all of their parts there, who don't have the fallopian tubes and cervix and uterus there and all of that, you still have that energy there. you still have the energy there.
You still have the memory, the divine memory of who you are.
Absolutely. So it's being there, being 100% there, and it's learning to be one with that space there and living from that space there, which we're going to be talking about more later. And I think we're almost running out of time.
We are. I just looked at the time and was like, uh-oh. I know a lot of people are on vacation, so they're like, no, we can hang out, we can kick it. I'm sitting in my house, the fireplace is going, it's raining out here. I'm just sipping my coffee, talking to Kim and all, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. It's 12:15. I'm like, we just on here having a good time. So, yeah, we do want to, give you a few more tools, but ultimately everything we do is about going a little bit deeper. Kim, you taught me a ritual of listening to my womb over my head. I have always, really flowed in intuition. I can't run a business without trusting my intuition. Every product I launch, every book I've written, everything I've ever done has been through divine intuition, through the whisper on the inside of me. So I've learned to trust that. But the technique that you gave me for actually allowing the womb to speak, it was groundbreaking for me. And so we want to, have you stick with us a few more minutes. We have a few more slides, and then we have a sacred invitation for you, because Kim and I are actually taking women on a 5-week journey that really becomes a lifetime journey, where we'll be connected in a global village, a sisterhood village, a womb, wealth, wisdom village, where we'll be birthing vision, healing our body. So we're getting into everything from herbology and colon therapy and cleansing, because my old background is in cleansing and body wellness and healing. That's my old roots, is really wellness. And so we want to explain to you some of those things and invite you to be on this sacred journey with us for 5 weeks that are starting in January, and then ongoing connection with one another, because we need this. But I want to cover a few more things, because my goal is always, when we do these calls, some people will join classes with us, and they'll say, oh, I want to go deeper. This isn't enough for me. We can't cover everything in an hour, or even, the time that we've been here is just too deep. But for those of you who've had sexual trauma, for those of you who have gone through the actual trauma that comes from infertility, that comes from miscarriage, that comes from abortion, that comes from a violation of who you are as a woman, where if you were violated as a child, if you were violated as a grown woman through what we've termed as date rape, we've kind of watered that down a little bit, but, women have lost their ability to say no. We've lost our ability to trust that we can have boundaries. We've lost our ability to cause a man to rise up to our standards. My husband and I kissed for the first time on our wedding date. And, I know that's extreme, in today's culture, but I did understand my value, and that if I tell a man, no, wait for me, he's going to wait, and I'm not in that same place anymore. I'm a grown woman, and there are things that, I might not go back to as it relates to how rigid I was then in my Christianity. However, I do understand that my essence won't be polluted by any random man. Nobody's laying in my bedroom. No way, because I value the sacredness of the essence that God has put on the inside of me. And a random man who's not attached to my calling, or that I don't love, that's pollution. That's pollution in the spirit. And so many of you need that healing work, that soul tie, that breaking. So I'm going to give you a few tools for that before we get off the call, especially because if you can get some breakthrough, which you will before this new year comes in, we're actually having a ritual and release party at my house tomorrow night. Kim, I wish you lived in L.A. sometimes, because I know you would be here. So I told my girlfriends, I said, this is not a year to party and be crazy. This is a reflective year. We are going into a transformational time. So, but for some of you, who are healing from those very real traumas to the womb, over this 5 weeks, we're going to give you those tools. But I wanted to talk a little bit before we go into that about the wealth womb crisis. If there's one thing that I'm passionate about, it's about positioning women in purpose. Every single woman that I'm connected with gets pushed out in purpose. Every single one. There's not a woman who's around me her gift does not get stirred up. That is part of my core calling, to see the gifts in other women and to activate them in purpose. So we have a brand new community coming up in the new year called Purpose Society, and it's just amazing. And this really started from this because I had unhealed trauma in my womb through a miscarriage, and it was a healing journey that God took me on with that, where he showed me that he wanted to give new life for that life that wasn't ready to come. But I had to acknowledge it first. And so there was a process that I was led through very intuitively by one of the womb healers that I'm connected with, who's in Florida. And it was just amazing. And so I started to think, well, if I'm feeling this, and I've been doing this kind of work for 20 years, what other women are struggling with this? And I came to see so many women have books in them that have never been birthed. Kim, you and I both published books, and you know it is like a birthing. Many of you have business ideas in you, never been birthed. You have wealth in you. You have legacy in you. You have a divine DNA that's really set up to be a creator, where you're not punching in on somebody's clock, but you're creating opportunities for other people. You know, I started a blog with $12 to my name, and it was hard for me to spend that $12 because we were so poor at that time. It was right after the recession. We were just in a really tough place. And I remember when I decided to spend the $12, I actually was making a decision about what my kids were going to eat that night. Do you hear me?
Oh.
Do you hear me? And I say this not to brag. I say this not to boast. I say this to show you what God can do with a yes and the little that you do have. Because fast forward a few years, you know, we're going to have our first 7-figure year in 2017. You know, in these last 90 days, we've brought in over $100,000 in sales. And so to think that God could take somebody trembling and shake, and yet even in that, there was so much that was being blocked because I hadn't healed a trauma that really felt like death in my womb, because it was death in my womb, because I wanted that baby. I wanted that baby. And when I was bleeding out, it was symbolic of something that was dying in me. And so it took me many months to heal that. But then I heard from women who said, I've had miscarriages, I've had abortions, and I just kept it moving. I just kept it moving. And then they wondered why they couldn't write their book. They couldn't get into a healthy relationship. They kept having trouble with men. They kept having conflict with everybody in their lives, and it's because they weren't in their wholeness. So when we get into the class work, I'm going to share with you some very intimate details of my testimony, as will Kim, with some of the other healers that we work with. But on today, I just want to give you a few tools that you can take into this new year where you can really experience some freedom. You know, and the first thing really comes down to surrender. You know, it's a thing of really giving up the fight. You know, and God asks for our permission. You know, there's a gentleman's side. There's a gentleman's side to where surrender is really a point of not losing. It's a point of surrender is the beginning of victory, because surrender is inviting divine intervention. It's inviting infinite intelligence into your life and saying, there's something you know, there's something you see, there's something greater and beyond me, and I want access to that. And so the life of a surrendered woman becomes so full and so rich because she's in the flow. Kim, you and I talk about the flow all the time. There's a hustle and then there's a flow. And so many women are hustling and chasing and grasping and striving, and I can't talk about them because I lived in that place, lived in it, lived for it, lived in it, and it, oh, my God, when you get on the other side and you start to live in alchemy and rapid manifestation and flow and intuition, you literally almost feel a little guilty because you're like, ooh, should life feel this good? Like, is something wrong? Like, do other people know about this? You know, so when you reach a place of surrender, it's a different life. So when you reach a place of surrender, you invite that divine level of intervention. And I want to say this, you know, for so many of us, we need to find our tears. Ladies, there's been so much energy trying to keep it together, so much energy in suppressing, so much energy in avoiding, so much energy in pretending that it didn't happen. But you know what grief means? All I deal with, Kim, and a lot of what I deal with in my coaching is unhealed grief. Women who could not find their tears. But grief is good. I mean, why did the Bible even say that Jesus was a man acquainted with sorrows and grief? Grief means you were worthy. Grief means something broke your heart and your heart desired and deserved more. Grief means that whatever hurt you mattered because you matter. Have you ever cried for a friend when you've seen her lose something? Have you ever cried when something, you saw something? I cried my eyes out watching Fences. Why? Because it was something about Viola Davis and that grief that hit her that gave me permission to release my own grief because I felt her. And in that scene where she released her grief, it was like she was worthy of those tears because of the love and the belief that she had. So for those of us who've gone through betrayal, we've gone through loss. My old mentor, Sister Bunny Wilson, used to say that if you don't heal betrayal will have a baby, and that baby is bitterness.
Wow.
Betrayal gives birth to a baby, and that baby is bitterness. So when we can cry for ourselves and let the tears come, sometimes those are the tears of a little girl who is lost and frightened. It's the tears of a teenage girl who felt like she was unseen or felt like she was seen too much. So, when you look up one day as a grown woman and your life doesn't match on the outside what you expected and envisioned on the inside, is that not worth your tears? Because you lost something, even if it was a dream. And when you can cry for it, you give it value. And when you can let those tears flow, you're saying to yourself, I matter. What I wanted mattered. What I desire still matters. And I'm willing to weep for myself because I'm worthy of my tears. And so when you let it go, you're in a place of accepting the fact that grief is the next stage of your healing. And so a lot of this journey started through my tears, and then it welcomed other women's tears. And then we got to a place where we had gotten past surrender, and we had gotten past grief, and then we could forgive. And so many of us as we go into this new year, we don't need to just forgive ourselves. We have other people to forgive, but that unforgiveness is locked in our womb too. That unforgiveness is keeping us overweight, is keeping us stuck, is keeping us unable to move forward. So one of the things that I do is I give you tools on how to walk in forgiveness. And I also, one of our womb healers in this course, Cynthia Branch, is a therapist, because I was like, I need a therapist on these calls, because at the end of each one of these calls, we're going to actually have a girlfriend therapy session where we go into some deeper tools for healing. All we want to do is give you language and tools. So surrender is first. Allowing your tears to flow, and even if the tears don't flow, just acknowledging that you are worthy of something better, and you still are.